So, did you meet anybody on New Year's Eve? Did you meet anybody on New Year's Eve? That has been the big question. That has been the big question since I released my episode last week. I did an episode where I talked about greeting 2025 with a sense of openness, with a sense of optimism, instead of being defensive and wary in new or uncomfortable situations, approaching those situations with a curiosity, with an openness, with a question that says not how can this go really, really bad, but how can this go really, really great? And I used the example of a person going out on New Year's Eve and then meeting somebody and feeling a real connection with that person and hitting it off with that person. And then waking up the next day wondering, geez, should I pursue this? Should I follow this up? And then self-doubt creeping in. And then maybe your perception is colored by past experience. And you've been unlucky in love. And you become reluctant to further that connection, or at least see if it was actually real. And so I put that out there as an example. And the big question ever since has been, hey man, did you meet somebody on New Year's Eve? And then some of you who thought more deeply about this question realized I had recorded that episode on New Year's Eve. And so they thought, hey, wait a minute. Did you meet somebody before New Year's Eve? Did you meet somebody? Did you meet somebody? Is there something going on? Is there something you want to tell us, Johnny boy? Did you meet somebody? And I have never been a person to not kiss and tell. So you're just going to have to ask the great mystery for the answer to that question. But I ask it to you. Did you meet somebody on New Year's Eve? Maybe you did. Maybe you did. You went out there to the local Legion Hall, to the $20 a ticket party with your pals, and you met somebody just like that scenario I outlined in the last episode. You met somebody great. You felt this connection. You spent the evening kind of chatting with each other, getting to know each other, and you just felt a real connection. And you followed up the next day, and it's all working out great. Everything is great, and happy days are here again. And if that happened for you, I offer you my very sincere congratulations. But what if it didn't go that way? What if you didn't meet anybody at all? Again, you didn't meet anybody at all. And you've been going out there into the world, not meeting anybody at all. And it's bringing you down, and it's sort of bringing you kind of on a low plane into 2025. And you're wondering, what's the freaking point now? And you're discouraged and you're upset. Or what if you met somebody? Just again, like I outlined in the last episode, right? What if you went out on New Year's Eve and actually did meet somebody? Somebody new. You met someone who is just so attractive and charming and charismatic and sweet. Somebody who can talk articulately about many interesting things. Somebody who makes you laugh and blush and is lean and athletic and clever and plays the drums and has a cool podcast. Somebody who is confident but vulnerable, humble but so immensely capable. Somebody who is a living dream, a unicorn, but is just flawed enough to be human in such an alluring way. Maybe you met somebody just like that, and you hit it off really, really, really well, and you just laughed, and you just talked so easily, and talked so comfortably together. And at the end of the night, you said your farewells, and the pull was just magnetic, and you knew it was magnetic. You're not making that up. But you're just a little bit vulnerable yourself, and just a little bit scared of being hurt. But then the next day you woke up and you questioned whether last night was an illusion, and you wondered, do I follow up on this? And then you listened to my New Year's Day episode. The episode that said in 2025, we're being open, and we are approaching these circumstances and others like it with a sense of optimism that says, how can this work out great? And so you plucked up your courage and you sent a message to that person with trembling fingers, tentative, trembling fingers. You pressed the send button, and then you breathed, and you waited, and you waited, and you waited, and you waited. And you thought about how great it could be. And then, nothing. Crickets, baby, ghosted on New Year's Day. What do you say about that? What do you say about that? Well, first of all, I say to you, gentle listener, kudos for putting yourself out there, okay? It takes courage. This is what I'm learning as a newly single person. Peeking over the parapet with no little trepidation about the prospect of being single and out there, I say kudos to you. I say take great courage, take great heart from the fact that you made yourself vulnerable anyways. And I would remind you, as we sit here, a week after New Year's, and maybe you reached out to that person and you have not heard one damn syllable in response. And that hurts. Feels bad because you feel like my radar's just way off. Like I utterly misinterpreted that whole event. And it may not be true. And it was real to you, man, or lady, or however you identify. It was real to you. And I don't want you to second guess yourself. Okay, I just want you, and I also don't want you to undercut yourself. I don't want you to tear yourself down in that scenario. I want you to be proud that you put yourself out there, proud that you approached with optimism. I want you to be proud of yourself that you are risking injury, that you are making yourself vulnerable, because good things will happen. All right, maybe they didn't, but maybe they did in this scenario, because sometimes what you didn't get is exactly way better than what you might have got. You don't know the answer to that. And it goes the same if you got rejected for a job or if you went out for a band and you didn't get the gig. The first thing I want you to do is take heart and be proud of yourself and pat yourself on the back for taking the chance. All right, for being vulnerable, for putting yourself out there. Like that Theodore Roosevelt quote, it is not the man in the stands who counts, it's the man in the arena. That's the only person that counts, and you have put yourself in the arena. And for that, I doff my proverbial cap, okay? And ditto anything that you put yourself out there for and may have been rejected or ignored or not gotten the result that you thought you wanted, all right? This is not a reflection on you. You have done your best, presumably. You have risked failure. You have risked humiliation. You have risked rejection. And that is not a mark against your character. That is a mark in favor of your character. My hat is off to anybody who takes a freaking chance and who risks it. All right, the reward will come eventually, but eventually is not here yet. And so you've got to try to come to some reconciliation, to some understanding of how to proceed from here. And that question puts me in mind of a really funny bit that Louis C.K. did on a recent special. And Louis was talking about Bible stuff, okay? And he did a bit, maybe you've heard this one. If you haven't, go listen to it, about Jesus and the fig tree. And this is a real story from the book of Mark in the Bible. Louis C.K. was reading it out of what I assume was the King James Version, okay? Didn't make this up. This is a real Jesus story, where Jesus and his posse are going into Jerusalem, hanging out, making the scene. And Jesus is hangry. little bit hangry, you know? And so he's looking around, he's agitated, he's hungry. He sees a fig tree in the distance, right? And he walks up to the fig tree, hoping thereupon to find figs because he's hungry, right? I will caveat this by saying Louis C.K. tells this story way better and way funnier than I do. But let's be real. I'm Schmucky the podcaster. Louis C.K. is one of the great comedians of all time. So the more entertaining version is going to come from him, okay? You can go on YouTube. You can hear him tell the story. Jesus gets up to the tree, and the time of figs is not yet. The time of figs is not yet. There is no fig on the tree, and hangry Jesus gets mad. And he says, "No man will ever eat fruit from you again. He curseth the tree." And then they go off on their business. And the next day they're walking by. Peter says, "Jesus, look, the tree." And it was all withered up and it was dead. And Jesus says, "Have faith in the Lord." And as Louis C.K. rightly points out, what kind of a Jesus story is that? And what the hell is the point of that story? And then he takes it on from the perspective of the tree, like, dude, the time of figs is not yet. What do you want me to do? The time of figs is not yet. And it's a really funny punchline, actually. The way he delivers it is way funnier than me. But ever since I heard that bit, there are things that stay with me sometimes. I've mentioned and done episodes about a bunch of them in the past. What's the story? What's the truth? You know, that's an example. What do you tell yourself? And is that actually the real reality about whatever it is you're contemplating? Usually it's not. But I have these kind of, not exactly mantras, but there's just things that I keep in my head that I pull out at times when I need them. So I'm feeling upset or depressed about a situation, anxious about a situation, and I look at it and I recognize the way I'm feeling about it emotionally, and it's not good and it's not helpful. And so I step back and I say to myself, what's the story and what's the truth? Let's take that to New Year's Eve. What's the story you're telling yourself? Well, I met this person and he or she was fabulous. They were fabulous. And I wrote to them the next day and they ghosted me. And so the story you can tell yourself is that you're not worthy of love, that you screwed up, that you're not wanted, that you are in some way deficient. But what's the truth? I mean, if you run off with the story of your own inadequacy, all you're going to do is pull yourself down and you're going to begin to transmit this inadequacy into the world and you're going to be depressed and you're going to feel bad about yourself. And. It's an utterly negative approach produces an utterly negative result, right? You don't want that. So you stop and say, what's the story? That's the story I'm telling myself. But what's the truth? Well, the truth is, who knows what the truth is? The truth is you were courageous enough to put yourself out there. And who knows what the story is with that other person, right? Who knows what the story is with that other person? And you may have dodged a bullet. I mean, I've seen this time and time again in my own life. I'm sure you have too, and the people you know. You applied for that job. You didn't get it. Oh, the time of figs is not yet. That's what I come back to now. Ever since I saw that Louis C.K. bit, ever since I heard it, one of the things I come back to, it goes into my list of stuff that I come back to. What's the story? What's the truth? Truth is that person you met might have been a complete jerk or is just as frightened as you and therefore not really ready for you. And it does not reflect badly on you. It doesn't reflect badly at all, possibly. It just is what it is. What's the truth? You're okay. You did a courageous thing and you move on. And you don't get depressed about that. You just chalk it up to life happening and on you go rather than getting lost in the story, which is utterly negative, right? And so you encounter these negative situations like the person ghosted me. I thought we had something there maybe, and the person ghosted me. And you don't really have a response to that. You sort of ruminate on it. You don't know what to do with it. I submit to you, Louis C.K., the time of figs is not yet. I am more and more becoming attuned to and learning to trust this concept of timing. Now, some people in the esoteric world, in the spiritual world, would describe this as divine timing. And I like that. I mean, I am more and more and more buying into and having faith in this idea of the mystery, in this idea of the magic, in this idea of a consciousness that exists beyond what we can see, but that we are a part of and that we can tap into. And quantum physics is beginning to prove that these dimensions exist. I've had a little bit of experience with that myself, and I have talked to people smarter than me who are very attuned to these sorts of dimensions. You can call it spirit. Stuff that exists that's beyond us, that we have the capability to tap into, but we block ourselves from it in a variety of ways. And I'm not expert enough to talk about that. But this idea of timing, and I look at it particularly in the context of the last 5 months or so as my marriage has begun to come apart. And you look at the timing of that and you think, well, why is that happening now? Why is that happening now? Why didn't that happen 2 years ago? Why is it not happening in 2 years from now? You try to place it. If you don't place it in a context, it just becomes like a random thing and a frightening thing. But if you can try to mold that into a context, it's like, okay, there's something happening here. And I don't really understand why it's happening now. But again, we're approaching everything with how can this work out? Great. And we are trying to approach life with a positive vibe, with a positive and a hopeful and an optimistic approach. And that approach says, well, this is happening right now and it sucks. It sucks and it hurts. In a lot of ways, it's not really good. But if you begin to tap into and trust this notion of timing, you say, well, okay, it's happening and it hurts, but why is it happening and why is it happening now? And then I've talked at length about this process of trying to get a job. And for years, literally, I was applying for and interviewing jobs and not getting them. And then one came along that seemed utterly perfect, that would solve a lot of the problems I was running into as a separating person, financially, stability, etc. And it seemed very, very perfect. And I didn't get it. And then this other job came along that does not fit any of the criteria that I thought were the important ones. And it came along in the moment when it came along, like precisely when I needed it. There was this amazing sense of timing, and it's a year contract. And then you begin to think about the longer timeline, like why is a separation happening now? Why did a contract come now for this length of time? And what is working behind the scenes? What is developing behind the scenes? And what are we going to sweep into a year from now? It's like, why did it work out that we decided to stay in our house together for the moment because it's financially prudent, and the job that I got doesn't really make it easy for me to be on my own anyways. It's like, well, why is life, why is the mystery keeping me here in this position, keeping us in this position? And what is the table being set for? And I know that sounds woo-woo, but the alternative to looking at it that way, one of the alternatives to looking at it that way, is just to freaking panic. What am I going to do in a year? Right? It's to panic. And panic creates anxiety. Panic creates depression. Panic creates rash decisions, maybe not very good decisions at times. And you can approach everything like a stoic as well, and there's some value in that. You can simply just look at it like, this sucks right now and we'll get through somehow. It's a slightly less optimistic. You can take a Taoist approach, which is simply to flow with the river, man. Just let it unfold and trust in it. And all of that is sort of connected to this notion that I'm talking about of trusting in timing. And so when you need something just a little bit pithy to hold on to in these circumstances where things are not coming to you in the way that you wanted them to, or as quickly as you wanted them to, or you have kind of a soul-destroying defeat about not getting a particular job, or a person ghosted you, or things to just not work out the way you wanted them to, you can say to yourself, well, the time of figs is not yet. The time of figs is not yet. It's like I met this what seemed to be on paper, a really great person. And the chemistry was absolutely undeniable. And the timing seemed right. And then you followed up and got ghosted. And, maybe you've been looking for a long time for a partner and it's just not come to you, not come to you, not come to you. And you're becoming depressed about that and you're feeling bad about yourself because of that. And you don't know what to do with that information. Well, you can step back and you can say, the time of figs is not yet. Meaning, now is not the time. For whatever reason, now is not the time. That person that ghosted you might be the right person, but now is not the time of figs. That person's got some stuff to sort out and is in no way emotionally prepared to enter into a relationship with you. And ghosting somebody is not cool. All right. That is not great behavior. And I think that's a pretty heavy duty beach-sized red flag. But maybe in 2 weeks or 6 months, that person has gone through whatever it is, resolved whatever it is. Who knows? I mean, who knows what's going on in a person's private life, especially somebody you just met, right? And that person has stuff to work out. And if the two of you had gotten together at this moment, the day after, it might have been a friggin' disaster, right? Because that person is not ready. Or deep down inside, you're not ready. And this is going to be a great match a year from now. But at this moment, 9. And if you had pushed it through, or if it had come to you at that moment, might have been an absolute disaster. And then it would have ended badly and you would have perhaps lost that person forever. I mean, it hurts to be ghosted, especially if you were really, really interested. But it doesn't help you to be hurt. Feel it. Okay, do not deny your feelings, but don't dwell on them. And then if you need something to pull you out of that, if you need a perspective or a philosophy to pull you out of that, the time of figs is not yet. It's just not ripe. It's not there yet. Same with a job. It's like, I thought I had something in the bag that was going to be on paper perfect. Didn't get it. And that was crushing. Okay, that was a crushing blow in a whole series of crushing blows. If we look at your life as a series of rounds, I was really getting pounded in that round. And then that one knocked me to my knees. Didn't knock me out, champ, but it knocked me to my knees. All right, we had a standing 8 count after that one. But the time of figs was not yet. And a few weeks later, the job that I actually got fell into place. And you have to trust that the job you actually got was the figs. It was the figs, Newton. And it was the right one. And you have to trust that timing, even though it looks strange on paper. And that other one that may have been so perfect was going to be a nightmare. You have to look at it that it was going to be a nightmare. The leadership was going to be awful, or the work was going to be terrible, or the corporate culture was going to be bad, or they were going to downsize in 6 months and you were going to lose that. Something bad was going to happen. It was not the right job for you. The time of figs was not yet. And so it is with the relationship. Now, look, I'm talking to myself here, Kate, because I know whether the time of figs is now or not. Eventually, I will be in that world. Right? And I'm trying to enter that world in a responsible way, which means I'm taking my frigging time, okay? Because I've seen this happen many times. I've seen people come out of a long-term relationship, a marriage, and then barrel face first into the dating scene for lots of reasons that make sense. All right, they're hurt and they want to numb themselves, or they've had their self-esteem rocked and they want the validation out there, or they just want a distraction, or maybe, and this happens more than you might realize, people have come out of a long-term relationship, but the relationship's been over for years. Right? Nobody's maybe acknowledged that, but both partners have checked out years ago, right? And so they've spent the last 3 or 4 years being lonely, wanting to be with somebody, wanting love, wanting romance, wanting all that stuff. And they've spent 4 years preparing for it. And then the day they're free, they burst out that front door and they go and find it. I see that happen all the time. Okay. So I say all this stuff to myself now because I'm not bursting face forward into the dating scene. I'm trying to enter that consciously whenever the time comes, whenever the time of figs has come. I will enter the dating scene consciously, self-aware, prepared, to the extent that I can be. I mean, it's like walking into a freaking funhouse for me. I don't know what's waiting on the other side. But I'm trying to approach life now in all aspects consciously. And I want to go in stable, with my marbles, with my feet on the friggin' ground, into whatever is happening, whether it's dating or work or what happens in a year, whatever. I'm trying to focus on being the best me, right? And then presenting into the world in whatever area the very best version of myself. So I'm taking heart and paying attention too, because I will probably need the time of figs. I will probably need that caveat at some point in the future. The time of figs is not yet. And I think that's just a really much more healthy way of looking at rejection or looking at disappointment or looking at not getting what it is you thought you wanted. Learning to trust that what you didn't get is a bullet dodged. That job I didn't get that seemed so perfect, that's a bullet dodged. And then this other one came along, and how exciting is that? When you see some timing begin to unfold, it really amplifies your faith in things. And it could happen, if you're out there and you met somebody and you thought maybe there was something there and it turned out to not necessarily be there, at least not yet. Could happen that in 2 weeks or 2 months, you meet somebody else that turns out to be the love of your friggin' life. And we hear stories about that happening all the time. All the time. You hear people say, I really had my heart set on this thing, and then it didn't work out, and thank God it didn't, because what came after it was everything. It can be hard when you're in the trenches. It can be hard when you're slogging through to maintain that kind of faith, and I understand that. Like when I didn't get the job that I thought I wanted, that was devastating. Now I've done enough work, and I'm conscious enough that after a couple of days, I was able to pull myself back from that. That was a rough one, man. Like literally on my knees. That was, and I mean literally, I was on my knees from that because it was a cruel blow, a crushing blow amongst a series of crushing blows at that point in my life. And it's just going to be that way sometimes. But if instead of taking that personally, instead of panicking about it, instead of fearing the worst, if you can look at that and say, the time of figs is not yet. I'm not ready for a new relationship yet. Or the timing for me of a new relationship is not yet. Or the person that is going to change your life in the best possible way, well, is actually you. But let's say in a romantic context, your person is out there, but it's not time yet. It's not ripe yet, And it's hard to hold on to that when you really want something, right? But part of consciousness is just being okay with the timing and having faith in the timing and knowing that if you're not getting what it is you want right now, it's because it can be so much better later when the time of figs has come. So, that's my answer, I guess, to did you meet anybody on New Year's Eve? The time of figs is not yet. And I hope that helps you in some way. Okay? I know how difficult it is to not get that thing you wanted, to not get a gig you wanted, something that you worked really hard for. It's like, you hear those stories too, right? Like a person goes out for a band and does really well at the audition and gets along with everybody and it looks super duper cool, and then they don't get that gig, right? And then they wallow for 6 months because they didn't get that gig, and that band goes off and plays some shows. And then the person who didn't get the gig winds up joining another band, 5 or 6 months later, and the original band breaks up because the lead singer meets a chick on New Year's Eve and she wrecks everything. And then the band falls apart, and the new band that the person joined signs a record deal the following year and winds up touring, opening for the friggin' Foo Fighters. Right? You've got to trust the rejection, right? You've got to trust the timing. You've got to trust when the time of figs is not yet. So if you find yourself in that position right now, and you're upset about something, you're disappointed by something, you're dispirited by something, you are just really disappointed that something didn't work out the way you wanted, the time of figs is not yet. And have faith in that, and then be excited about when the time of figs comes. Be so excited, because it's like all of this person seemed so utterly perfect and great. And it seemed as though the universe had brought that person into my life and all would be well. Think about if that person wasn't the person. If that person wasn't the person, how amazing is the person who's better for you than that person? Or the job that's better for you than that job? Or the band that's better for you than that band? How great is that going to be? And can you hold on to that? Can you? I have to go. I'm a working man now, so I've got responsibilities, but I just wanted to get that to you as we tentatively set foot into 2025. Hold on to it, man. Trust the timing. Look around at your own life at when timing has been absolutely amazing. Talk to people about when timing has been amazing in their own life, man. Put together some data on this. Hold on to it. Trust the timing, right? Surrender yourself to the timing. Allow it. Work on yourself. Keep preparing for your moment. And then, man, when the time of figs comes, fill your freaking boots. Fill your face. Eat them all. I have to go. I don't have a solid music recommendation this week, but The Darkness dropped a new single called I Hate Myself. Really, it's like a Cheap Trick kind of a song. I guess I do have a recommendation. New song by The Darkness. Got a real Cheap Trick vibe if Cheap Trick was a bit punk and a little heavier. Really, really fun, catchy tune. Strange video. Justin Hawkins looking like an AI person just smoking a cigarette. That's the whole video. And it's kind of really, really cool, actually. Great song, The Darkness, I Hate Myself. It's a banger. Freaking up-tempo, halftime. No, double time. Up-tempo. I don't want to confuse my terminology. Really, really good song. Just a banger. Just fun. Really kind of a summertime song. Love The Darkness. Go check that out. And thank you as ever for listening. Good things happen when you put yourself out there. And, if you're getting something from this, please do me a solid and just share it around. Tell your friends. Maybe even leave me a review on Apple. I haven't had one in years, so that would warm my cockles, kids. Until then, good things happen when you put yourself out there. Take care of yourself, and remember, man, the time of figs is not yet. And I'll check you later. Yeah. I wouldn't even attempt to sing a Darkness song.